ready. Thank you all for being here today. As you know, I'm Dana Drzenovich. I am most of your professor. Welcome to them, for those of you who I don't have in class. Today we have 3 alums who are willing to spend 55 minutes with us to tell us about their experiences here and professionally. I invite you guys to answer questions. Come on in. I already told them that we have some econ, GBUS, and accounting finance people that you might ask more businessy stuff. Please, you guys, at any point, raise your hand. Okay, you listen to me enough. I'm not going to talk very much, but if they hit something that you would like to expand on or you have a question, don't hesitate. They're here to talk to you. We'll start with introductions. They'll tell you, who they are, what their major and if they had a minor was, what they graduated, and a little bit about what they're doing now, and then we'll kind of take it from there. So Anna, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Anna Hession. I was a 2011 grad, and I majored in Spanish and communications. And right now I work as a writer at 3M in the healthcare division in the Global Marketing Center.
Okay. Michael?
I was totally on mute, totally unprepared. Hi there, I am Michael. I graduated from St. John's in 2018, which seems like ages ago, but it was really only like 4 years ago. I graduated with a degree in communication. For a while there, I also was part of the Hispanic Studies group, but it was more of a minor path rather than a major path. But towards my senior year, around there, I ended up dropping that part of the degree off and focused solely on my communication. I really just wanted to, pursue more classes, especially the media related classes that I heard so much about when I was sort of an underclassman, the freshman or sophomore. But yeah, so communication, graduated in 2018. Right out of college, I went to a startup based out of Minneapolis, and that's what Dana was talking about. For those of you who were here a few minutes ago, stayed there for a couple years, made my way over to an agency in Minneapolis called Hayworth Marketing and Media. And in both of those positions, I was in more of a project manager role. So very communication heavy, very business heavy. And most recently, just a few months ago, I actually accepted a position at OMG 23, which is a agency based out of Los Angeles. They are Walt Disney Studios media agency, the only media agency they have. So my job right now is very project management focused, again, working solely with Walt Disney Studios from a movie release perspective. So all of their movie franchises, Star Wars, Pixar, Marvel, things like that, working to project manage all of those advertising marketing campaigns to get those movies off the ground and make sure they launch successfully. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm working remotely full time, so I still live in Minneapolis, but I'd say 90% of the people I work with on a daily basis are obviously based out of LA, Burbank area. So that's me.
Great. And Logan?
I'm Logan Patterson. I was a 2017 communication grad. I started out as a communication manager at Love Your Melon. I'm sure some of you have heard of us. We're a local startup company. Yeah, makes the hats. Yeah. So I started as a communication manager there, which is basically our customer service role. I did that for about 1.5 years and then transitioned over into our logistics side. And that's where I've been the last 2.5 years. So I'm currently the logistics and fulfillment manager. So I basically oversee this whole part of the company from when the product leaves our manufacturing network until it gets in the hands of the customer. So I oversee our warehouse. I work with all of our shipping partners like FedEx, DHL, and stuff like that. So I did communication in the first job, still a lot of communication in this job, just with a little more analytics, but communication is important.
Good. Before I go on here, is there anybody who wants to just throw out the first question? Oh,
Now, Logan, do you work with any third-party logistics companies?
Oh yeah, so we don't run our own warehouse. Our 3PL is based out of Chicago area.
This
So
is
we
what-
kind of lease space from them, and then like it's all their staff that, run it. So I'm just in constant communication with our ops managers and account managers on site. We probably are on the phone hours each day. So yeah, definitely 3PL based, and especially working remote, like I'm not physically there to see what's happening. So communication back and forth on both ends is really important. I'm using a lot.
You ever foresee them doing their own assets and doing it through their own company?
Can you say that one more time? Sorry, I couldn't make that out.
You said you work for Love Your Melon, right?
Yep.
Could you see them being like an asset base and like running their own logistics?
Yeah, so when I started right out of school, I mean, that was what, June 2017. I mean, we were way smaller back then, but at that point, our warehouse was based out of like just downtown, not downtown Minneapolis, kind of like northeast Minneapolis. And literally the first week I started was the week we were moving out of that warehouse as we outgrew it. It's something we kind of tossed the idea around, but there's a lot of funding and money that you need to put into it to fulfill your own operation. So from a company perspective, it's easier to kind of just outsource that and let a company who's really good at it manage it, and then we can still focus on the stuff that matters, like making the product and all that.
Given that we have, some business-based majors, some comm-based majors who likely are going to end up in a business setting, maybe a medical setting, a healthcare setting, would you just talk a little bit about some of your key classes and experiences in college that really helped launch you and your skill set and your portfolio or whatever it is that you felt really played an important role in you getting your first job and continuing your employment, trajectory? Whoever wants to start this one.
I can start.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I think, for me, it's really, really tough because I don't think I've never been able to pinpoint like one specific class that really, really did it for me. I think I'm speaking obviously from a very communication class heavy perspective. That's what a lot of my, like I said, classroom time was focused on. But obviously, I know a lot of you are in, or maybe it was the last session, but in the advanced media writing, intro to media writing class. I think that specifically, not to suck up here, but was a good class. I think it really teaches you how to, write, especially for me coming from a media perspective right now, knowing how to write even just a solid email to someone, to anyone, is something that I didn't think was going to be super important to know, but it's like day one, rule numero uno, know how to do this sort of thing when you're in any sort of office or business setting. But I think more than anything, just from a communication perspective, just learning how to communicate effectively. And I know that's super vague, but it's like, you don't really understand how much or how important it actually is to know how to communicate effectively with someone until you've actually put in the time and the effort to understand why and how you can do that super clearly. I mean, I did a class called group communication back when I was a sophomore. I did, all of the intro classes to the communication major were super integral into just understanding that. And I think especially now, like I said, I'm working with people who aren't from Minnesota. Mostly, I'd say 90% of the time, the people I'm talking to are from California. And I think something I learned really quick at my current position is obviously the Minnesota nice thing is something that we don't notice very often just because we live it 24/7. But it's not something that the people out there are used to experiencing. So I think I got told like 10 times in the first week. I was like, why are you saying thank you so much? Why are you saying sorry so much? And I was just like, I don't know, it's just like how I'm used to communicating, because obviously I was working with Minnesota-based companies beforehand, and that's just how everyone talks. So it's like you learn all these different interpersonal means of communication, and all of those were talked about heavily in St. Ben's classes. So I was like, man, I remember talking about this in class, and I'm glad I remembered and actually took this class so I can actually apply it to what I'm doing now, because it was very awkward, but I think a lot of the skills and experiences I had from St. Ben's, specifically communication classes, were able to like very easily transfer over into the workplace, which was super, super helpful.
And Logan, for you, you don't work in a communication position per se. So for our more, businessy oriented people, how did the communication classes that you took and what experience, how does that come into play at your job?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to echo Michael, there's not like one specific class where like you look back and you're like, oh, I learned this that Wednesday, in Kelly's class or something like that. But just as an overall, like taking classes in all of, if you still do like the 3 different pillar classes, like taking classes in each of those different pillars was super helpful, and just learning to communicate with so many different kinds of people. Like I work with our warehouse in Chicago, so I'm on the phone with, not people who work on the warehouse floor, and then, the building directors who work in an office, and like to communicate with both of them, very different ways of how they operate. So you kind of have to, adapt to that and learn. But from a more businessy perspective, classes, I mean, I took freedom of speech, I took news and democracy. My capstone was the strategic communications campaign. I did public relations, I did women's voices. I mean, and all of those in different ways just helped me become more comfortable communicating with different people. Like women's voices, I think I was one of maybe 2 guys, and then the rest of the 25-person class was all girls. So like from the get-go, not that I was uncomfortable, but you're in an unfamiliar situation, and you kind of just have to embrace it. And I've kind of just brought that into work, where a lot of times you don't know what you're doing, and part of it is just being confident that you're going to find the solution to the problem that's having. And a lot of these communication courses and the activities that I did at college, which was to study abroad, on-campus jobs, JEC, clubs, that kind of thing. Like there's not like one specific thing, but get yourself out there and explore all of those different avenues, because you may not realize it now, but 5 years down the road, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I learned, this was super helpful because of this and this. So that would be my biggest advice, is just don't hold back. Like you have so much available to you there, so use it.
Anna, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so I would say, for me, I think like the global component, I studied abroad in Guatemala, and for folks that are entering like the global business realm, I mean, having those like cultural competencies and that like cultural awareness is really key. And I'd say like 2 tangible examples that I can think of that I ran up against recently. I'm a writer, so I'm working on stories about what's happening in 3M healthcare. And I was interviewing a fellow who's Chinese. He's in China, and he's part of the supply chain. And I was interviewing him about how we were able to kind of like expedite the approval of getting like one of our manufacturing plants to get products up and running, because there was a shutdown due to COVID and Chinese national holidays. Anyway, the way that I teed up the story is this fellow was kind of like the center point of the story, and he reviewed it and he was like, Anna, I'm so uncomfortable with this. I would really like you to talk about it from more of like a team-based perspective, because like in China, it's really like in poor taste to elevate one person, and we like look at it as a collective. And then I was working on a story with our director of sustainability, Anila Prabhu, who is Indian. And a similar thing happened where she was like quoted 3 times in a row. And she was like, Anna, I'm so uncomfortable with this. I don't like it. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that. And she's like, it's a very Eastern, like cultural touchstone where we don't like really want to be showcased. So is there a way that we can talk about it like more in like a team way? So I guess just to circle back, like having that study abroad experience and like having like the Spanish background, like really taught me how to like listen and be aware and like take that feedback in and then use that to pivot. So I just think like, yeah, any opportunity you have to, to expand your like global knowledge will serve you well, especially if you plan to go into like a global business realm.
Anybody want to jump in yet? Oh, all right, Brandon, my students get 3 extra credit points for asking a question, so they're gonna ask questions.
All right, this one's directed more towards Michael. So you obviously had a few different jobs the last couple of years out of college. Can you kind of touch on like how bouncing around has been beneficial for you and kind of getting different experiences, as well as like the Johnny connection and kind of helping you get those experiences if they've helped you land some of those jobs, or kind of how that's helped?
Yeah, for sure. I think right off the bat, I think, I can't speak for everyone in, the current state of the world and everything like that, but I definitely think the whole COVID situation has definitely amplified the bouncing around aspect of a lot of positions. For instance, the one I'm in right now probably wouldn't have been available to me had COVID not happened, just because, working from home across the globe has become so normalized and, normalized in the grander scheme of things, just because, we had that, involuntary practice because of COVID. And it turns out that, everyone is able to actually do that pretty effectively. So I will say that, but in terms of where I started, I'll expand a little bit. My first job out of college was actually at that sports mobile app fan engagement position, where I was more of a project manager there. I will say, upon graduating, I had 0 leads on jobs. So if that's you in a similar boat, don't panic. We've all been there. I had no internship experience while I was in college, aside from a brief month-long internship while I was abroad, actually with Logan. We were both in London. So I really had no experience. No huge experience in a workplace setting coming out of college. So I felt, compared to a lot of my other peers, that I was pretty behind the pack or just kind of lost. My immediate job that I got out of college actually had no Johnny connection or Benny connection whatsoever. It was off of LinkedIn, applied. And like I said, it was a startup. So if you're not familiar with how startups kind of work, at least in my experience, job roles are pretty fluid, just because you kind of have to wear a lot of hats in all situations. So I was hired on as a media and marketing coordinator, and I quickly kind of just transitioned into a project management role. And what we did was we built fan engagement apps for live sports events, pretty much across the globe, with a heavy focus on the professional tennis scene. So I was traveling around the country, over to Paris a couple times, just because it's what the job turned into. So I kind of got lucky in that sense where, right off the bat, I just kind of got that project management experience, and that's where I really understood and decided that I was interested in doing that. So that first job just kind of happened. I think there was no real sequence of events that led me there, aside from just luckily coming across a posting on LinkedIn and applying and getting the job. But like I said, from that point on, I stayed there for a couple of years, made my way over to Hayworth Marketing and Media. It's a media agency based out of Minneapolis. And at that point, I did know a couple people from St. John, St. Ben's who were working there at the time. Shout out to LinkedIn. And I connected with them, sent them a message, and was like, hey, I'm interested in, advertising. And there was a project management-esque role available at the time. So I used that connection to kind of get my foot in the door. It worked out. Started working there on advertising logistics. It's essentially just project management, a fun way of saying that. Stayed there for 2 years. Got really good experience working from an advertising perspective on brands like Dick's Sporting Goods, Beats by Dre, Bear Paint from the Home Depot. So just kind of it ran the gamut of everything advertising and project management. It was kind of a beautiful marriage of those two things. And then that led me to where I am now, with Disney and OMG 23. Someone that I worked with at Hayworth moved over to OMG 23, and I was able to use that connection to kind of get my foot in the door here. So everything is, after that first job, everything was really interconnected on how I've kind of jumped around and made my way from job to job. I think in the past, it's been very almost frowned upon. I guess when I was learning about the job scene, it was like frowned upon to be like jumping around from job to job too much. But I think one, that's the nature of the media and advertising landscape. Your time at each position seems to be significantly lower than other job roles or job types, maybe in the business or any other sector. It's just kind of the way that advertising works. You kind of just hopping around a little bit more than a lot of other people do. So I don't think it's necessarily as bad as it is put out to be, or as it was taught to me to be, jumping around a little bit. But at each of these positions, I was there for a couple years, gained some experience, and then decided I wanted to move on and do something else. And I still don't think I've fully found out what I want to do. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is just being able to expand your horizons and kind of figure out what works best for you. Maybe 2 years from now, I'll be doing something completely different. So I hope that was a good explanation of kind of like where I've kind of came from and gone.
Logan, Anna, did either of you tap into the alumni network or classmates or?
Yeah, 100%. I have definitely leveraged my connections in order to, secure roles. Similarly to Michael, I applied to a position at a startup right out of school, and there was a Johnny that worked there. And so I messaged him on LinkedIn and said, hey, I applied. And I feel like that kind of helped me get my foot in the door. And then when I was in a contract role where I was full-time, I secured that gig through a Benny who was working at a placement agency. So definitely have, utilized that network. And then also, I feel like through that, I also learned how to network with external people. So while I was at 3M, I was getting coffees and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think that staying connected can be super helpful and beneficial.
Yeah, mine's interesting. I wouldn't say I necessarily, for my job, because this is I've been at Logan Mellon for 4.5 years since I graduated. I didn't necessarily use a straight alum connection. Mine was, so I reached out to a high school friend. And it took me, I graduated mid-May, the first month you're just looking for jobs, applying, getting some interviews. But I think about a month in of looking, I saw this job posting at Logan Mellon. I know, I heard the name, it's a local company. So I texted one of my high school friends who I hadn't talked to in a while, but I knew she volunteered, kind of did the campus crew thing for Logan Mellon in college, and just asked if she knew anybody at headquarters. And it turns out her cousin was the customer service director overseeing the job posting that I was applying for. So she gave me his personal cell phone number, shot him a text like, hey, I got your number from Maddie. Just wanted to let you know I applied. I'm super excited about the position. And that got my application looked at, and out of more than 1,000 applicants, I got the job, probably solely because of that text. A lot of us are super qualified for the jobs we're looking for, but with how the world works these days, the resume algorithm thing where you're applying and they're literally looking for some keyword, it's real. So we might be super qualified, but if you don't have that one word that they're looking for, your resume is not going to get seen. So being able to either utilize the Johnny Benny connection and find anyone at that company and just say, hey, I'm applying, is there any advice you could give me? Or is there someone who works in, this department that you could connect me with to learn more about the role? That's the kind of stuff that gets your foot in the door and gets you seen, and therefore gets your resume, looked at quickly, or it gets looked at in the first place in the mess of all the other applicants. And then since then, it's just been all internal moves, but just utilize, it doesn't just have to be Johnny Benny. If you go to an internship, stay in touch with that person. Professors, stay in touch with your professors, because everyone is connected, whether they know it or not. So just maintain those, because I feel like 95% of the people you talk to when they're 10 years down their job road, almost everything they've gotten is because of someone they knew from school, from college, from another job, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to name drop.
Great. And in the last session, somebody asked, everybody, we've talked about what we should do, and there's some things we shouldn't do. And one of the big things was that you shouldn't be hot, you shouldn't be shy, you shouldn't hesitate. to connect with people who are from St. John St. Ben. If you contact XPD, they can hook you up with some alums in your area of interest. There are lots of ways to connect, so, use it.
Do you think it's more beneficial to like, say you're trying to connect with someone at a company that you don't like really have any connections with? Do you think it'd be smarter to connect with LinkedIn or to email them separately?
Yeah, I guess I was actually just about to say the amount of times I've blindly connected with people on LinkedIn because I either saw they were at or went to St. John St. Ben's, or because they were working somewhere that I was like, oh, that would be fun to work at. I've done that so many times. Like I still do to this day. I'm just like, oh, that looks fun. And I connect with them and I'll either send them a message on LinkedIn, or I think that's just a really great way to introduce yourself because it's pretty informal. I think emailing a lot of times either comes off as like too professional, or it feels like oddly professional to like just blindly cold email someone. Not to say that that's a bad thing to do, because I've done that too, but I think LinkedIn offers a really good opportunity to just kind of like, just send a quick message, say, introduce yourself, and then kind of go from there.
But don't be afraid to tap in your professors. I get messages from people all the time, like, again, I'm applying at this company now. Do you know anyone from CSBSJU, or do you know anyone there? And, use your resources. We're all here to help you.
Hey,
Oh, for sure.
Michael, I have a question. I'm Bob from left field. This is really random. Did you work with International Management Group at the tennis field? IMG?
IMG. I loosely worked with IMG, more so from it was not really a business standpoint, but from just being a colleague of some of the people in that area, just because we would see each other at some of these tennis events and, chat back and forth. I think after I left where I was, I think IMG partnered with them maybe a little bit more in a formal role, but nothing formal, just like a handshake, hello sort of thing.
Okay, Bob.
Sounds good. IMG is a gigantic sports, they're a huge agency based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And they have tentacles in everything.
This is Bob Godwin from Global Business, by the way.
Yeah.
The odd thing is Bob and I are from the same hometown. It's very strange coincidence.
Don't be embarrassed about it.
Well, I'm
going back into my cave, trust me.
Oh, one of the things that seem to be really interesting to students is, we have all these people coming from these really specialized schools. And here come these students from a liberal arts school where they have a broader based background. There's not like a journalism program or a very specific, human resources major. Could you tell us a little bit about how you use your liberal arts background or education to your advantage? Either what it brought to the table for you, or how you presented it as a plus for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Logan. Looks like you're just unmuted.
Yeah, I'll go quick. I think especially for like companies in the Midwest local here, like I've talked to so many people where they're like, when they see a Benny or Johnny applicant come through, like they know that they're getting a well-rounded, like hardworking, good person. Like, not to talk down on any of their schools, but like these are people who are not Johnnies or Bennies that say these kind of things. So like the fact that you go to a school that has that sort of reputation, like we come out and you're just, how to communicate with people. You've taken classes that make you uncomfortable. You've taken classes and things that you might not be very good at, but you had to get creative and, learn in ways that you might not be used to doing. And all of those little things are skills that you don't realize at the time, but like you use on a day-to-day basis now. So that would be my one thing there. And then Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you always hear the, liberal arts makes you more well-rounded individual, well-rounded, professional. I think it's cliche almost to, in a sense, but it doesn't mean it's not true. I definitely think that if you put two resumes side by side, one from, St. John's and St. Ben's, and then one from, let's say, just like U of M or something like that, and you have on paper, the only difference between those two resumes is the school on it, I feel like, and this is I can't say this with a certainty, but I feel like it's going to raise more eyebrows if you have the same experience as someone, from the U of M, but you come from a small liberal arts college in central Minnesota. I think that part does get played down a little bit. But I don't think it's something that should be ignored, because it is kind of great how much opportunity, students do get at St. John St. Ben's to actually just like get involved on campus and be a part of clubs and all the different classes you can take. I also think that a lot of the soft skills that, it takes to be a good, professional or a good employee or just a good person are, really stressed, and the importance of them is shown really often, at least it was.
Michael, could you give us an example of some of those soft skills you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just coming from a workplace setting and just that perspective of things, I think, just good organization, good leadership, the importance of just like note taking and time management, especially in my job with project management. I mean, like, and especially with someone like Walt Disney Studios, I mean, things are moving so fast all the time. And whether you started a day ago or like you've been there for a year, you just kind of get thrown into the ring of fire. You kind of have to lean on a lot of those skills to kind of carry yourself through and, succeed, because as much as, employers are there to help you, it's like you need to be able to independently act and work on your own and push things forward on your own without always needing someone there to help you. And I think that, the skills that it takes to be that person were skills that I worked on very hard at St. John's and St. Ben's, but I also think it's something that a lot of people don't stress the importance of, at other schools and things like that. Again, not to put down any other school, because every opportunity with education is great, but at specifically St. John's and St. Ben's, it was something that was like drilled into your brain, especially from a communication perspective and business.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add on there, and we've talked a lot about like problem solving. I mean, and you're doing this in college, we do it in our jobs every day, but your ability to problem solve and how you react when issues come up, I think totally differentiates people, in the workforce these days. There's some people where when a problem comes up, they just like shut down and, someone else has to take over and finish the task versus, I think a lot of us, Johnny's and Benny's, like, where, we understand the problem, we don't take it as like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Like we sit, we look down, you kind of look ahead, you make a plan, and how you react to that says a lot more than the problem itself. So I think just being able to problem solve, and one like random piece of advice I would give is, if you have a problem, like put an effort in to try and figure it out a little bit on yourself if you can before going to someone else. Like there's nothing like personally that grinds my gears more than if it's just like a super simple little mundane task and someone comes to me like, hey, I can't do this. And it's like something you can find out on Google. Like just little tips like that, like totally make you stick out in a good or a bad way in the workforce. So just like stick to your guns, like try and figure it out yourself. If you can't, then you just go to someone and say, hey, I'm having this problem. Here are the things that I tried. Are you able to help me with this? Instead of just saying, hey, I have a problem, and then they have to kind of hold your hand and do it.
And sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say, I have one more thing to say, but I want to let Anna say something if she wanted to add into that too.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't want to like just take over here. I was just going to say, to add on to something Logan had said about, problem solving. I think a lot of that, I would say something that I wish I knew early on in my like interviewing process with a lot of these places and just other jobs I've applied for in the past, is all of that like really starts in that interview, when you're interviewing with that person across the table from you, or right now, I guess, like for my last job, I interviewed over Zoom. So that was a whole nother thing that was like kind of weird to do. But, I can't name the amount of times that I've been sitting in an interview with someone, and it's like, you can prepare as much as you want for an interview. Practice all those questions that like you Google like top interview questions to prepare for. I've done that. But there's always just like that one or two questions that you're sitting there and you just freeze up and you just don't know how to answer it. How you respond to that situation. I've been told this before from either people I've interviewed with or just other, friends of mine who have been in a similar situation. How you respond to that really gives them a good idea of how you respond to a problem in the workplace too, or just something that you don't know how to do. If you just freeze up and just like say nothing, it shows. But if you kind of work your way through it with them, kind of show you're critically thinking about it, it does go a long way. So I just wanted to mention that too.
Yeah, and I wanted to, you know, kind of to circle back on like, you know, the value of the liberal arts background. I think today being a generalist is such a value add because things are changing so quickly. And so, you know, 3M's tagline is science applied to life. And I wasn't a science major, but I am curious and I enjoy learning, and I think I bring that to work every day. And you know, in marketing specifically, like a lot of times you'll hear brands talk about archetypes. So it's like these characters or personalities that you would assign to a brand. And I think for 3M, like an archetype is the curious, you know, someone who's curious, like a curious inventor or a scientist. You know, you think about like, what is that exactly? Well, it's somebody who asks questions. It's somebody who's a critical thinker. It's somebody who, like to Logan and Michael's point, solves problems. And so I think, you know, I definitely think like bringing in that liberal arts background is a value add. And if you can tell a story about that in your interview, you know, and you can communicate that narrative, you'll help employers see like what you bring to the table.
Anybody else want to throw in a question before I do? Brian.
So I had a question, or I was kind of
Brian, by the way.
wondering, so my major is accounting finance and my minor is communication. So I'm just wondering, with maybe an interest in like being in the sports industry or just in general, like how can I use those two kind of things to my advantage? Because I kind of want to learn more about finance. It's more of a newer thing to me, but I feel like one of my strong suits is communication and I enjoy it. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think of that.
It's a good problem to have.
It's true. I was going to say, does anyone, before I jump into either of you, want to? Cool. You know, coming out of college, I was kind of in the same boat. I mean, obviously not from an accounting finance background perspective, but wanting to be somewhat involved in the sports side of things. For instance, on campus, I was a part of Stream Team, which I'm not sure if still exists, but it was part of Johnny Benny Media, live streaming sports events. And that was kind of like my in while I was on campus to just like work somewhat in sports and just kind of you flex that muscle. But I think coming out of college and knowing what I know now about working in the advertising, media, and sports fields a little bit is just how much like I wish I would have become more well-versed in like just numbers. And it sounds like super vague, and I know, but it's like the amount of times that I have to crunch numbers, use spreadsheets to work through budgets, and just kind of understand that whole other side of business on a daily basis is like way more than I ever thought I would need to use it. And I say that because had I known, I would have, you know, done more at St. John's and St. Ben's to, you know, prepare myself, and even prior and even after to do more to prepare myself for that. So I don't think it's a knock on you at all to have that part of, you know, that piece of knowledge and that, you know, understanding, because I think that's what a lot of people who try and enter either, you know, communications or business or sports fields kind of just like put to the wayside for other pieces of experience. So I definitely think it's going to help you. I think it's something to definitely flex and show that you have, because you will stand out because of that, in my opinion. At least that's what I've seen and kind of experienced on my side of things.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I would say, like, you know, if it sounds like sports is your passion, but you have a knowledge of numbers. Like we are constantly like talking about numbers, and you know, in like my role from a communication standpoint, like we plan town halls. So it's like, you know, when everyone gets together once a quarter, and our team is tasked with like, how are we going to dish up this information to employees? And as someone who doesn't have a finance background, you know, half the time I don't know what it is exactly that we're looking at. So I think, you know, your command of that specific, you know, space is really valuable. And again, you know, you can offer that up as a skill and just say, I'm really passionate about, you know, sports or whatever industry it may be. And I have a really great command of financials. So when people like need to see why we're doing what we're doing or why we're making these decisions, you know, I can speak to that. So I think it's just, again, a matter of kind of how you tee it up and how you say, you know, this is what I can bring to the table. But I'd say that's like definitely an asset in any business setting.
For all of you, yeah, all you econ business, finance people in here, nobody in the finance econ hard business realm says, geez, it's a shame you communicate so well because we don't need that, right? Nobody in a communication setting says, wow, you sure don't need those number crunching skills. You know, I mean, it's just they work together beautifully. Which one you decide to emphasize, that'll come to you with time and info, honestly. But they're great complementary things. Anybody else?
I'm also Ryan. Obviously, a lot of you guys are working from home. Do you still think you work a typical conventional work week, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, however you want to put it?
I can start. I would say I feel like I work more from home than I do from the office. I mean, I think the biggest thing between the office and home is like you don't really have that separation when you're at home. You know, before if I left the office at 5:30 or whatever, you know, get home, you know, you put your laptop away, you know, you're not really staying up to date or checking on things. But now that I'm at home, it's like if I stop working, I take 3 steps and I'm in my kitchen. It's like there's not that mental separation. You know, my laptop never really moves, so it's always kind of just there. I mean, the flexibility, personally in my role has been way more. Like before I was in the office from 9 to 5, you know, and I've had something to do, I'd stay later. Now it's like if I want to work 7 to 3, you know, and I am efficient and can get everything done, then, you know, I can dip out early and go run an errand or get a workout in or something like that. But I think, like Michael said before, it's a really interesting time. I can't really speak to like what it would be like to enter the job world right now, but I don't think like working remote or from home is going away. I think it's only going to get bigger. So just being able to like make your space your own and like do what you need to do to be just as efficient. Like if you like working with monitors, get your monitor set up. Like that's what I have at home. But just being able to work in both, like it's cool that I've had both experiences. But I find myself working a little bit more just because there's not like that physical separation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say, I just agree 100%. I think for, I guess speaking for my current position and kind of like what life is like right now, I'm obviously working West Coast hours. So my workday doesn't start till 11 a.m. and then I don't log off until about 8 p.m. Central time. And I mean, I obviously knew that going into the job. But I think with that said, it's really hard for me not to kind of just see myself on my laptop, just in those like few early morning hours, just kind of get ahead on work. So I think, like Logan said, that physical separation of office and home, especially for me, that's my new normal. There's no going back to the office for me right now, just because my office is officially my home unless I move to California or something like that. But that separation, that non-separation now kind of just lends itself to, you know, working a little bit more. But I think that, in my opinion, the flexibility you do get from working from home is a really good trade-off, because it's like your morning commute, at least it is for me, is like 10 feet, I think, from my bed to my desk. So I will gladly take that instead of my usual like 25-minute through the city commute. And it's just not as fun doing that in the morning.
Dana, you had a question.
Yeah, so what are some steps or like advice you guys could give us as far as like what we should be doing now in order to get the most out of our like liberal arts education?
Get involved on campus if you're not. If you are going from your bed in the morning to class and then back to your dorm or apartment and then doing that for the rest of the night every day, try and do something else. Try and meet someone or like a new group of people, a new club, do an intramural sport, literally anything, I think, to expand your horizons, meet new people. You never know what connection you make on campus is going to translate into once you're out of college. People that I met in classes that I wasn't normally going to take when I was at St. John St. Ben's, that I kind of took on a whim, ended up being some of the people that helped secure my job at the ad agency that I worked at in Minneapolis. So I think if you're able to get involved and be a part of, if you have it, especially an on-campus job. My on-campus job helped me get so many positions just because it was so media influenced. Be selective in what you do too. Don't take up your time with things that you don't see helping you in any way. I don't think many people would do that, but obviously if it's fun, do it. That's what college is about. It's about having fun and learning new things. But I think being selective, because there are so many opportunities, is definitely something I would say to do too. And then last thing is, like I was mentioning earlier with those soft skills, it's really easy to skate by and kind of take your notes and leave class and take tests and write papers. But I think as much as you can like actively and proactively work on leadership and note taking and time management and like setting yourself a schedule and sticking to it, and just like any sort of self-discipline you can inside and out of the classroom is going to help you so much, because that's what really helped me and still helps me, like, that self-discipline, getting up and starting work and, going through my day. So.
Yeah, one other thing I would say, I mean, Michael pretty much nailed everything there, is like learning doesn't stop when you leave college. Like for me, like I started as a customer service, so I was using my communication skills, to react to so many different kinds of customers and the issues and stuff they were facing. But throughout that whole year and a half that I was in that position, I slowly started to work with our warehouse, to kind of take over that role from our customer service director, because he didn't like it as much. And then while I was doing that, then I slowly started to learn spreadsheets, and I didn't touch a spreadsheet once in college. And like throughout that year and a half, I just like slowly taught myself new things, whether it be a YouTube video or, asking at the time our analyst, like, hey, I'm just trying to do this. Can you show me quick? Like that desire to want to continue learning, like employers notice that. And, it not only helps you stick out, but like it helps you advance. Like, I mean, I would have never been in the position I am now, where like half of my day is spreadsheets, and then the other half of my day is like taking what I learn in that spreadsheet and communicating it to all of our different partners effectively. So just being able to continue learning, if like you're in your job and there's something that interests you, like don't be afraid to say like, hey, like if you ever need help on this, like let me know. I'd love to, learn more about how you do that kind of thing. It sticks out and it helps you learn more too, and then it keeps that drive going if it's something that you're interested in to progress down that path.
And even on campus, I mean, I get called for references all the time. And if I could say, oh my God, she came to a discussion once, or she was working on something and she did this extra research and found this really cool thing, like, those little examples, those are big. Anna, you have a good story about this too, or a good narrative about this. The continue, what you did in college and then how you kind of continued it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to answer your question specifically about what you should be doing now, number one, I would say like take it in, because this is time you won't get back, and that's something that I continue to work on. It's like, this is a season of life, and I'm kind of always thinking about like, what's the next thing? And then I kind of like berate myself for that, because I'm like, well, that's time I'm not getting back. So you're a senior in college, most of you, I think. Like how exciting, like take it in. And I think the second thing I would say is like, I feel like I'm kind of like an extracurricular junkie, but I really loved like having guest speakers. I loved like going to, clubs and events and like that, and to like exhibits by art students on campus. I mean, like, it was just so amazing. It's like we have all of these opportunities like centralized right here. And, you know, you literally have to like walk out your room to a building to go like take in this world-class speaker. Like, and I don't know, you know, I could be speaking out of turn now because everything is virtual. So, you know, I don't know exactly what the experiences are like. But I think, you know, at 3M, I like have to rein it in because I'm part of the Latino Resource Network. And like one cool thing that we recently got to do is we got like a virtual preview of the like Latin wing that's opening at the Smithsonian in Washington. And like things like that are so fascinating to me and really fuel me and like add color and texture to my life and to my professional life. And so, you know, and I think Logan and Michael were speaking to that, where it's like, make sure, you know, you don't just go to class, make sure that you're really taking advantage of all these opportunities because they're just a great way to like expand yourself as a person. And then, you know, that can inform what you do in your professional life, you know? So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and building that portfolio too of actual, here's some stuff I did and here are artifacts, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, especially in your first interviewing stage, I mean, you got to have some tangible stuff that you can speak about. So for me, it was like, I talked a lot about my capstone and like how that whole month-long, not month-long, like multi-month project, like working in a small group with 2 other people, and like, how did you react when you disagree? Like, you know, that's a question you might get asked in a job interview is, what are you going to do if you're working with someone you disagree on something? Well, for me, it's like most of us probably have had that experience in college. So being able to, you know, utilize those and say, hey, you know, we disagreed, here's what we did, and here's you know, how we came to a solution. That's another important thing to keep in mind.
Okay, we have just a couple more minutes. Anybody, Ryan, the third Ryan from my class has a question too.
Yeah, I guess this more applies to Michael, but from a project manager standpoint, it sounds like you've had some experience working with smaller clients. I'm sure some of those clients were a little bit unsure in the direction that they would like to go in. And now that you're with Disney, I would imagine that everything they want is somewhat set in stone. If you had instances where your experience with those smaller clients has helped you further Disney's agenda?
That is a really good question. You know, like you said, I think Disney and kind of just, not only Disney, but a lot of these larger clients that kind of have a, you know, international or even just national footprint, kind of understand what their goals are. And you kind of have to, if you're going to be successful, you know. I think, you know, I think with a lot of smaller clients, oftentimes I can call back to when I was working on at the sports startup, a lot of these tournaments and like sports events that were kind of dipping their toe into the mobile app and kind of just like digital era of marketing and, you know, fan engagement for the first time were really unsure about what they were going to be doing. And I think, you know, for the sake of time, I don't want to sit here just saying, but I think more than anything, it was like, you know, the problems that arise from needing to kind of take charge as, you know, a PM, project manager, sorry, or just like kind of tell the client what they need to hear rather than kind of just like letting them run with whatever they think will work and then kind of seeing if it sticks when you throw it at the wall. I think that leadership that it takes to do that, I think the way to communicate that in a way that doesn't come off-putting to them, and just the overall problem solving, you know, agenda or like skills that it takes to do that, I think apply immensely over to a larger client of any kind, whether that be, you know, Disney or, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that, because you understand they're coming from a different perspective, but ultimately where they want to go with something is the exact same. And being able to see the other side of the, of that coin really helps in kind of pushing forward what you're trying to do with one of those larger clients. I don't know if that made sense at all, but we're just gonna like say it did. I think connect with me on, all of you, like connect with me on LinkedIn and ask these questions, because it'll actually give me a non pressure time to think about an answer to it, and you'll probably get a better answer from me.
Great. Thank all three of you so much for being here with us. We appreciate your time.